Well, good afternoon everybody, and thank you for coming to our November History Talk. As you know, history has become part of the school curriculum, and our speaker, Prue, spends a lot of time going to local schools, particularly primary schools, to talk about Pioneer Cottage and history of Buddra and that sort of thing. And she usually goes as Mrs. Burnett in her long black skirt and her mock cap. And so convincing is she that some of the grade 1 and 2 kids think she is Mrs. Burnett. So she's a great ambassador for BHS. An opportunity like this arises just occasionally when we can show off some of our prized possessions, take them out of the acid-free boxes and give them a bit of an airing. They're so delicate that we can't have them on exhibition normally. So it's a great opportunity for our members to have a look at these lovely, lovely dresses. And after we've cleared up and put the chairs away, I'd like you all to come and have a look at the dressmaking involved. The needlework is just amazing in some of these gowns. This one is particularly old, the red one. It's they say 1850s. We don't know whether it's actually 1850s or maybe a bit later, but it won't be much later. And it was all hand done. And this other outfit, we don't know a lot about its history, but it was a wedding dress.
You're not an outfit.
And I'd also like to welcome Rose. We haven't seen her for a while, but it's great to have you back. As you know, Rose is something of an authority on textiles and historical clothing. So, thank you, Prue.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I fell into this job because we have groups come, as you know, and one of the groups that came for the third year running was the U3A Antiques and Collectibles group. The first year I told them the history of the cottage. The second year I showed them the storerooms and talked about the things in the display. And then this year I thought, what am I going to talk to them about? And so I decided I'd do fashion from 1880 to 1900. The reason I chose that time was because this house was built and settled in 1882. And things changed so quickly, and I thought 20 years was enough. I'm no world authority on it. I would love to have, if I hadn't been a nurse, I would have loved to have been a theatre costume lady. There's still time. Yes. I haven't got the skills anymore. So, right, we're going back to 1880s, and today, just imagine living in these dresses. Okay. Newstead House in Brisbane. In the leisure and upper classes, the houses were beautiful. They were very luxurious, and the ladies tended to swan around a bit, and they were overdressed, entertained in style, and they had maids, dressmakers, gardeners, and all on hand. Lorraine and I were lucky enough to go with the Sunshine Coast Council down to Newstead House only just recently, and that's where I've got all these beautiful photos. As you can see, it's quite a lovely house, and it's well worth a visit. The women's role, well, the woman that lives in this house was wife, mother and homemaker, but some women were out working. They were teachers, nurses, worked in shops and worked in houses, but the ladies in the country tended to have a different role. They were still the housekeeper and the homemaker, but they worked on the property. They did all the outside work and brought up all their children without any help. At this stage, there was an article in a paper, and it was mentioned in the press, if you want a girl to grow up gentle and womanly in her ways and her feelings, lace her up tight. So, the costumes at this stage, the bustle had come back in with a vengeance. This is my pointer. As you can see, it's all around the back, the bustle. The skirts had come in straight and flat against the sides, and the tops had risen up. They'd come up and were just above the waist. And you can see that in this here. The waist is up, but all the emphasis was on the back in the bustle. Didn't set this up very well, did I? So we'll have a look at the underwear. Okay, so what they wear under it? The corsets. The corsets were so tight. They used to have to be laced up. They called it the S, or the snake bend. The waists we tried to put a young girl into one of the costumes that we had, and we couldn't get the waist done up, and she was 13. So they really had the waists tightened up. The busts were pushed in together and flattened, and I was watching a program. I often don't sleep in the middle of the night, and they had a beautiful program on ABC about costumes, and they said the chaise lounge was developed at this stage because the ladies fainted, and so they were able to rest back on the chaise lounge, and that's what it was for. Oh, I never. So the bustle. Now, before this, they had padding under the bustles, but this one, as you can see, it's beautiful, isn't it? That would have been all handmade. But imagine trying to sit in it. Where would you put it to sit? And that's why this was so big, because it had that out around it. Okay, combinations. So underneath this, what did they wear? They had camisoles, and these are two that are in our display over there, and they're all handmade and they're just beautiful. Or they had combinations. Now the combinations went on the body first, then the corsets, then the petticoats, then the bustle. It was all there underneath. So no wonder they had them split so they could just squat. No. Okay, evening gowns. So the evening gowns were pretty low in the neck. They were usually sleeveless, and they wore their gloves right up. And Wilma actually had a pair of long gloves, but as you can see on this one, she's got her gloves up to here. And these are the unmarried girls. This necklaces, they were Princess Alexandra always wore these type of necklaces, and they became extremely popular. And then this is what the matron would have worn. One of our displays over there, it's got long sleeves and it's up at the neck. So the married women tended to keep their gowns more like so. Outerwear. Still on women. If they were riding, they used to wear the full habit. No bustle, but even the high neck, the coat, the jacket, and the hats often had a veil on them. Now, I'm not too sure about this in Australia, but I'd say that the people that were living in Newstead House most probably would have.
They'd have been riding side saddle.
Yes, I'd say so. If they were going travelling, they'd have dust coats over their clothes. So to keep, because if you remember, the travel at that stage was in coaches, Cobb and Co, etc. So it'd be quite dusty and mucky. Shoes. We've got some shoes on display up there. These are more everyday and evening wear type shoes. And if they had boots, they had a boot. They had to use the boot hook to pull all the buttons through, so they'd get all the buttons done up. Hats. Hats were quite flowery, flouncy, lots of feathers and things. But we've got a lovely little hat here and another one up there, and they're all handmade. This is more up in the top one there. So they were very classy. When they went for sport, which came in towards the end of that era, tennis and bike riding. Now, the tennis dresses, they adapted them to suit the climate more, but if they were wearing that, they were recommended to wear woolen underclothes under them, because woolen combinations most probably so that they wouldn't be too embarrassing to everyone else. But I love her pantaloons here. Aren't they lovely? And the hat and all. And this tennis group, the men as well. Men's fashion. I have to read this because it's very foreign to me, men's fashion. Okay. They had coats, jackets and trousers, and they were made, they were the order of the day. 3-piece suits of sack coat Matching waistcoat and trousers was an informal alternative to the contrasting frock coat, waistcoat and trousers. Cutaway coats, that one no, I don't know if I've actually got a cutaway coat there, were still worn for formal occasions, as well as the ascot tie. Does anyone know what an ascot tie is?
It's a
cravat.
Yeah.
Cravat, yeah. So this fellow's got his ascot tie on. My father wore a cravat. Yes.
With those clothes the men are wearing, they could get in and out of them themselves, and they were completely encased. They could move, and they could. They didn't have corsets. In other words, not obvious.
Yeah.
But women were still being tied up in knots.
Yep, and had to have somebody to help them dress, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, you had to be pulled in.
Always.
These are a shirt and the collar over in the display case, and everything's starched. Everything's starched. When they were out, they wore top coats. The coats usually had fur or velvet collars. So they were real dandies. But in Buderim, the working man, such as those in Buderim, were still influenced by the bushrangers. They weren't exactly bushrangers, but they were influenced by their clothing. Their clothes were more practical for the occupation and lifestyle. And we actually have a flannel shirt over in the display in the cottage, and they I'm not sure, but I think they would have been in the 20s, in the 19th century, sorry. 20th century, sorry, get my numbers right. But as you can see, they dressed for the position, the jobs that they had to do, and when they were chopping down trees, etc., it was a big job. Hard, hot work. Children's fashions. Young girls were dressed with round collars, and if they were really dressed up, they had H-line. And my mother made the most beautiful clothes, and I had the most beautiful H-line dress, and I thought I was wonderful with the inserted lace and the grub roses and the drawn thread work and everything, which is what they would have worn, all done up. Pinafores were worn to work, and the school children wore pinafores, and we've got lots of pinafores up here. In winter, a warm coat, and they carried muffs, but they always wore gloves within their muffs, which were either suede or leather as well. Hats and all. Beautiful, aren't they? Climate. So when they came to out here, they realised that the climate would make a difference, and the population. They realised they had to change things, but they still tried to keep up with the fashions for things like going to the balls, etc. The well-to-do, especially in public, whether on official engagements, balls or church, undoubtedly kept up the facade of dressing as in Europe, even if their attire was made locally. For women, that means inappropriately structured tight undergarments, etc., as we've mentioned before, and long skirts, hats and gloves. For the men, formal suits. Government House in Brisbane was the model for this kind of clothing, yet a surprising amount of male and female clothing was a response to the climate. This supported a contemporary belief that heavy clothes that overheated white races in the tropics caused a moral and physical deterioration. The beach was popular for Buderim families at Christmas, and that's Mooloolaba. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. Okay. Men went swimming a lot earlier than women, and women were often shaded by towels, by blankets and everything, so that they could get into the water. When they did go, they had to have neck to knees and had to be very proper. But I can't imagine, if you lived here, that you would be that restrained. Can you? I think if you were down there and there was not much on, I mean, not on you, I mean on just not many people on, you'd be out there swimming, especially today. I could have done with a swim today. Okay. Janet Walker. When I was doing this research, I came across Janet Walker, and she fascinated me. And she also fascinated Michael Marengo. And Michael Marengo was the chap who fixed up our flag for us. Down at the museum in Brisbane, he's done a whole thing on Janet. She was in 1882. Janet Walker opened up dressmaking shops in Brisbane. She had one in I don't know my Brisbane streets too well. Queen Street, and another one in Adelaide Street, and she employed about 130 women making clothes. Now, she made, this is one of her dresses that's at the museum, very similar to this, isn't it, really? And apparently the work in that is just beautiful, and this is another one that he's collected of hers. Now, after she had those shops, she also opened up an emporium for women only. Now, that's different to the Finney Isles, which were there at the time, because Finney Isles and the other places had everything. They had men and women's, but Janet Walker opened up for just women. Now, information about what to wear was obtained by the women from letters from home, plus magazines that came, and they had lots of beautiful shops in Brisbane that sold, and in the country areas, that sold the lovely materials. And Rose gave me this. Now, Rose, could you talk to what it is?
Oh, a friend of mine up here gave it. Well, actually, it's been handed round and round and round, but it is one of the papers out of a fashion magazine, beautiful paper. And what they've done is cut out, they've got the head still photogravure, I think they called it, in place, but they've cut out slices around where the dresses are, and they've put the actual fabric in as a demonstration of what you could have your dresses made in. I think I can take the back of this off.
No, I'd leave it.
Would you?
Yeah, but if you look at it, they've even got the lace underneath, so we'll pass it around so that you can all have a look. It's just beautiful.
It's faded terribly.
Yeah.
But you get an idea of the colours just on the edges where it goes into the paper.
So, you know, to be,
Like that craft work.
yeah, that they do now with the raising up, but this is just to sell the materials. Yeah.
Or
And
to advertise the dresses, how they would
yeah,
look when they were actually made.
yeah, it's just lovely. And even people like MIDI up here would have had materials available to the customers as well. So the supply of these clothes and accessories were her shop. Her emporium only stayed open a couple of years, but it was actually in Finney Isles warehouse. She had it in Finney Isles warehouse, but she stayed making clothes for many years, and it's just amazing that she's done such beautiful work, and that we're lucky that somebody has made sure that we've kept them. And so just on the end, on that, this is Mr. Middleton's shop as it was back then, and it's just, everybody said that you could buy anything and everything inside Mr. Middleton's shop. And
Needle to a haystack.
Needle to a haystack.
And
Well,
that's what hung down from this.
yeah, and in Harrods in London it was a needle to an elephant. Yeah. Okay, that's it, folks. Yeah. Up here we've got quite a few things that Rose has brought in, which has got her family's wedding photos and such from that period. A lovely embroidered lace hanky. What's the medallion? It's a memorial medallion with a
It's morning
jewellery. Yeah. And up the back we've got the hats and the shoes and these dresses. Please feel free to come and have a look. I don't know if I can answer any questions, but if I can't, Rose might be able to.
Were they whale bones in those corsets we saw at the beginning?
Yes.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
And they were sort of a plastic type of thing.
But you know, the whalebone wasn't actual whalebone. It was the stuff they filtered through. It's not actually the bone, baling. Yeah.
Their teeth sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't their bone, that would be too hard. It
Yeah.
was flexible. Like the
But not very.
now.
But not very.
Like that.
Yes, horrible, wasn't it? No wonder they had the fainting fits.
This is an example of Victorian mourning jewellery. On one side there's a photograph of the deceased, and on the other side there's a lock of hair. That's strange people do.
But they even made flowers out of the hair and all that sort of
That
thing.
dates from 1913.
Oh, well, it's after Victoria then. And these are photographs of Rose's grandparents' wedding. They came out from Wales, and this is
Gives you the definite dates of the clothing there. It gives you a better regard for how the clothing sort of, when it went out and when it came out here and changed and so on.
This is the great-grandparents, and this is the grandmother. And this is a bit similar to this outfit here, although it would have been about 20 years later after this one. So you're welcome to have a look at all of those.
And we've got Victoria sponge because it was Queen Victoria's favourite meal. And I recently made something for somebody else which was Queen Elizabeth's favourite cake. So
I remember going to school dates in the 1950s and having to eat Victoria sponge.
have to eat. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Are there any questions? Oh, right, just a minute.
I'm sorry I haven't got a question, but I have got a comment. I know that a couple of decades ago this historical society was instrumental in starting a new trend in the displaying of bustles, and that was the use of the wine cask. This is my mother's invention. I think she must have had something to do with wine cask. And so you took the wine cask and you sort of adjusted it and you blew it up and you put it in as a bustle, and apparently that went all round Queensland as the new form of bustle, but I think we don't have wine casks now, do we? We just buy cheap wine in bottles. And I don't know whether you've got any of those left. Have you got any the wine cask? I think
We haven't any wine casks, no.
Haven't you? All right. Well, we should look out for one.
We have one if you can find one.
Yes, because it works very well.
Yeah, wine cask bladder.
Do you mean the bladder inside?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the bladder inside. No, not the cardboard.
Oh, you can always go up to the pub and buy one and drink it.
How many years ago are you talking about when they did it?
Oh, this would have been 1980.
Would you be able to tell us something?
We were all, yes, we were all in wine cask.
Something about how we came to have both of those
Wilma is most probably able to answer
in
that.
our collection.
Well, like everything else, they were given to us. People of Buderim have been incredibly generous over the years, and we get about 130 to 150 objects a year donated to us, which is just fantastic. And these were given to us, which is just amazing.
But we-
Have you any idea, though, the family,
No.
no history of how?
Some people just put something in a bag and put it in the veranda,
Yeah.
and we have no idea.
We have got a wedding dress.
We do have a lot of other
Well,
stuff
that,
that's
I think we've had it for
available.
about 40 years. So that was, well, I think so, yes.
And Wilma said every time she opens the box she has to vacuum it because all little bits of velvet come off it. And she was out there shaking the sheet that it was wrapped in today.
There's a net underskirt in this, and it is just falling apart. You'll probably see bits of it on the floor there.
Yeah.
And the velvet is also pilling, so it normally rests on a piece of calico, but every time we lift it up, there's all this get rid on the calico, so we have to reset. So it's not going to last forever, but we're very lucky to have it.
So this isn't the Lunn one, is it?
No,
We have,
it's very similar.
yeah, we have a dress from Mrs. Lunn, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
And it's a wedding dress, and that's the one the 13-year-old girl tried to turn on. You got McClintock.
She was London.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No, that's all right. And we had the young girl come in, she was 13 and she still couldn't do it up here. She held a little posy of flowers in front because she couldn't do up the buttons.
The significance of the young girl is that she was actually a descendant of this woman.
Yes.
So she was able to come here and wear the wedding dress and be photographed in it. So it was great.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Or? Yes,
Another point comes to me. I mean, I just know how much knowledge Rose has, and we won't always have her with us. I was wondering if, Rose, you'd be able to identify the names of the fabrics of some of the costumes.
I've been through them and tried, but one can be an expert on a certain aspect of it, but you can't know all the fabrics and everything because they came from all over the world. They did them in different ways and they mixed up different things, and at different times you had different mixtures of things, and a lot of it came out of India, a lot of it came out of China. There were silks and cottons and wools used, and I would love to meet someone who could do that.
There was actually a wool fabric that was out at Ipswich, and by 1888 it was producing woolen clothing for Brisbane, which was and shawls and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good heavens.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. My favourite is flowers.
Well, I think they're your favourite flowers.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely.
Rose, thank
Yes,
you for
sure.
being with us once again.
Heavens, thank you so much.
That's lovely. Afternoon tea will be served. Did you want to say something, Heidi? Did you have your hand up?
I wanted to say thank you for enlightening me with the purpose of my bustle.
Right. You didn't know what it was there for before.
Or dress. But actually, I wanted to respond to Rose. One of the things that I did study in my interior design, I studied interior design and fabrics from the 11th century onward. And maybe when we're finished with this eco proposal that we're doing at the moment, which is really exhausting, for want of a better word, perhaps I could share some of my history files on the fabrics, because the fabrics are essential in my business in the heritage and restoration of period homes in London, which is what I've been doing for probably 12 to 15 years.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
So maybe you could be a guest speaker.
Maybe we could have a
I
I'd just love to know.
Maybe once I've come to know you a little bit more, I don't feel quite so self-conscious. But certainly the fabrics, there's a lot of history there on tapestries and where those actual threads came from and how the yarns came about, and some of those original, where we originally got yarn and how they came through into the different designs. And so interiors and fashion have quite a crossover, but it's fabric making. So whatever the weft and warp were woven from is quite fascinating, and how it was dyed and so on.
Yeah, Rose did university too, didn't she?
Yeah. It does seem good. I went back to this year actually, which was interesting.
Yeah, so maybe we could all get together with all our various things and find where those fabrics are coming from.
Yes, I didn't concentrate on actual fabrics, it was just coincidental. I was doing it more from the art point of view. What I found was interesting. I did start investigating the relationship between fashion and politics and art and the way people lived. And they all entwine so much. You find one influencing the other for a long way through. And I was looking at this, that's why I asked specifically about the men being able to dress themselves, sort of thing. Because it seems right up until, I would say, almost the First World War or beyond, you always had to have someone help a woman. There was always groups of women around that because they had large families, and there was aunts and mothers and sisters, and they all stayed together. And whilst they all stayed together, they had these intricate clothes, these overdone bits and pieces and so on. And it wasn't until women sort of got the vote and started finding they needed to be more agile. I was just thinking this morning, being chased by a policeman and upended in the street, you needed something a little bit better than those quick hands. These sort of things influence you. And they do influence the way politics go, and there was a move there to get emancipation for women, and they needed other clothes, so fashion sort of followed the needs there. And if you look through history, you'll find it sort of happened.
And once they got more freedom, then they were able to do things like the sports, right, the push bike and
mannerism, and the Tudors and Elizabeth, and the sort of funny clothes they wore then, and the politics that followed, and sort of it started me off because I thought everybody in England must have had some horrible disease that took all their hair, because they were all photographed, all painted with no hair, sort of these headdresses, and they had no hair on their eyebrows and so. But it was a fashion. They plucked it all back.
Yeah.
And it sort of followed the way the clothes were long-waisted and the big tops of the men, and so once you start on that, you sort of follow through with other things, and you notice that whilst women stick together, they have complicated clothes. It isn't until they can dress themselves, they can go out and be on their own. I don't know whether that's good or not either.
And why not?
Well, you know, it depends on what you want, doesn't it? But at least you've got options then. So the world sort of follows these
trends.
But that's still happening, isn't it?
Yes. And one relies on the other to sort of change whatever it is. It'll be interesting to see what politics bring this time round.
Oh, worries.
Okay.
We'd like to invite you to have a cup of tea or coffee or a
Glass of water.